What's going on, workforce? Brian and Chris here, filming from the past, bringing it to you guys in your present feed. Chris has made his way over to Romania to help some family and friends. Hopefully you've been able to see that update video. But one of the things prior to you leaving, one of the conversations that we've had privately a couple times is, does Square Enix Final Fantasy XIV owe us an experience replacement for the MSQ Roulette? That's something that is going to be changing with 6.1. One of the reasons why you've been working on your 2.0 playthrough all the way through Hawk Manor. But Chris, like you're the real streamer here on this regards. You feel like this is something that's been asked of you multiple streams back to back to back. Why don't you set up the context of this conversation and let's explore it.
So the idea first came up when we found out initially that Cape Westwind was going away, Praetorium would be broken up. There was a speculation if they break Praetorium and Castrum up enough that they would slide into Leveling Roulette because they're both being reduced to 4-mans, and MSQ Roulette could go away altogether. That's not what's happening. They are remaining longer. What they're doing is they're cutting Praetorium in effectively half and then taking the last little dialogue section and moving it to a single-player scenario. And that'll make them, that should make the two halves, let's hope, in the ballpark of the same length as Castrum, so that you have 3 roughly identically length experiences. And then they said the total experience reward from the roulette is being reduced to be more in line with the amount of time being spent. We don't know if that also affects the Poetics drop. I know a lot of people aren't just referring to this as an experience boost that's needed, but it's also a regular source of Poetics for people that want leveling sets for all of their alt jobs. They want to go back and grind old relics. Poetics is one of those things that you only store 2,000 of it. So it always seems to be at cap right until you need it. And then you're like, oh, I need 50,000 of this. And you have to cap it 25 times. And so like, it feels like you're fine right until you're not. I am coming up on my last level 80 sets. And then I will need no more leveling gear from Poetics. And then it's only relics for me. And so like, once you get over that hump, there's some theoretical number of Poetics you need in your life. Most likely for the casual player, it's some number of hundreds of thousands probably, and then that's it. And once you have that, you've achieved it, and you won't need them to that degree really ever again. Like each expansion, the final raid set will become available, and like you'll need a quick little boost, and then you'll be done. But MSQ Roulette's a huge source of it. It's 500 for Castrum, 500 for Praetorium. It's a lot of experience, and it has been brought up in stream time and time again, each time this subject comes up, especially during the live letters, when people see one of the major sources of daily experience going away as far as quantity goes.
Right, but like, doesn't this just open the player up to have that time back to go and put that into other things? In my mind, it was always just like, hey, this is going to take a good chunk of your day.
Yeah, it's an hour.
Here's here's the what we would assume would be some kind of equivalent, maybe with a little added incentive. But when you factor in like beast tribes, hunts, heck, even like the new Criterion dungeons and and more, like ultimately I think that if you guys are just talking to the the community here, like if you were like, I actively enjoy running MSQ Roulette, sure, let me know, because like I don't want to sit here and diminish that that core group there, but I would just think that it's like, oh wait, you mean actually I'm getting more time to do the stuff that I enjoy? Because I always felt like it was an over incentivization, if that's a word, of that content, so that people didn't get stuck on that content in MSQ wise. What do you think?
So first, let's talk about the good news. This takes effect in 6.1. So until 7.0, when we go without a beast tribe until 7.1, from here on out, we will have a current beast tribe. Remember, previous beast tribe still reasonable, but current beast tribe is broken. And so you'll have current beast tribe, current hunts. Hunts are 3.5 million experience a day, and they take a little longer than a beast tribe, but they are wildly effective.
Yeah.
And the first couple days will take you longer because you don't know where everything is. But as you've done enough times that like a monster pops up that you've killed 3 times in the last week, you're like, oh, I know exactly where this is. And like you start to map out a route, it gets very, very fast.
Yeah.
Leveling roulette is still by far, in my opinion, the single best thing you can be doing. If the goal is to be good at that job in battle content, it is battle content. It is synced, so that's a caveat to that. You're getting gear that can be bought, sold, decent. Like there's some of the gear can even be sold on the market board, just from a handful, like Decimal Darkhold. You're getting seals. It's a wealth of everything and an incredible amount of experience. And many of the dungeons are very, very short. You have PvP roulette, which takes a match takes about as long as a dungeon, maybe a touch longer, depending on the time of day on your server. There are times where the queues are longer than 30 minutes. There's times where the queues are under 5 minutes. So just get to know how your time slot fares for that, and then pick it up and go do the hunts and the beast tribes while you're waiting. The nice thing about the PvP roulette is you can switch to whatever job you want to be once you're inside. So it's a great way to level jobs you don't care about. It's a lot like a free boost from Square Enix, because you don't learn anything about your job.
Right, like oh, I ran the PvP stuff. Now I know everything about the
We're talking
Black
about
Mage.
MSQ Roulette, so like it's not like MSQ Roulette's teaching you your job. But like these all require active things. Zad and Orbazja are very, very good at leveling, but we're, Palace of the Dead, Heaven on High are very good at leveling, but they require active play. The reason people like this is they want to pray for prey. Castrum regularly gets one or more people to leave at the beginning because people want to go AFK for 50 minutes and get a big bunch of nothing. Like they get this giant amount of experience for doing nothing. It's not something we need, but it is like the good news is there's a lot of other sources of experience, and that's before we say like our Criterion dungeon's going to have experience. I don't know what those are.
Right.
Like there's all sorts of possible, like PvP's changing. How does PvP get big chunks of experience? Does it get new challenge log things? Challenge log has a ton of experience locked inside it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of experience in this game. So that's the good news. The bad news is there is almost no replacement for the amount of Poetics you can get per day. Like experience per hour, it's not that good experience, but Poetics per hour, it's fairly reasonable. And when we talk about things like Moogle Tombstone events, your MSQ Roulette is brilliant because you basically go AFK for 35 to 50 minutes and you get like 7 or 10 Moogle scripts or whatever. And there's a Moogle Tombstone event going on right
now. At the time that we just started this on Tuesday, filming this, it kicked off on Monday, and I love these events. It's always something that it's like you get a lot of excitement, and I like that it usually runs up to the obviously the patch, and that's what's going to happen this time around. But the core aspect of this video is asking it: does Square Enix owe us that? Does the game owe us that source of Poetics, that source of experience? Because essentially, like the ability to AFK, like from a streaming perspective, is definitely like a perk because you could play another game, you could interact with chat, you could put in funny voices. Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, let me just take advantage of this content, hang out with chat while we see this cutscene that we've seen for the 100,000th time. I was like, that's always kind of like people like, Brian, do you do your MSQ Roulette? And so speaking for me personally, no, like that's something I avoid all the time. Like it's, somebody's like, oh, if you did that, you'd get that much more experience. It's like, for me personally, I avoid it. So I definitely don't feel like Square Enix owes me a replacement for something that I wasn't doing in the first place. But for the player, I guess, who's actively doing it, like who's taking advantage of those bonuses, do you see that gets spread out into other content? Do you want it to get spread out into other content? Or was that always broken and that was just the best solution for the time being?
I think the 50, 60, 70, 80 roulette could use a small experience boost, but nothing close to replacing MSQ Roulette. I just, like, every time I do it, I'm like, why did I do that? It's not that good of tomes. It's not that good of experience. And I assume people do come across those dungeons and need them for, like, MSQ or whatever. So I have no idea how that roulette even stays full because, like, I regret it every time I run it, and I run it once every 2 months. Once every 2 months, I click, I'm running all my roulettes, and I'm like, oh, I've only missed that one. And I click it, and then I do it, and I'm like, I should have just like logged out and done the dishes. Like that was just a complete waste. I have a
different experience though, because I agree with you 100% on the rewards, but I love those dungeons, and it brings me like when I get and it's such a collection of dungeons that are a part of that it's always like, oh man, like it's like such a nostalgia trip. Fair enough. Because it's like you never see them, and that's where it's like I've always just longed for the ability for those dungeons to become as a part of the expert. Like I wish that it's like you rolled expert and it's like, who knows, like there's so many dungeons and it's just like level 90 now, maybe you melt it down, I don't care. But for me, like that's the caveat, that's actually the reward of what dungeon have I not seen in 4 years, because there's no reason to go back and do those, and you end up getting it randomly and you're like, oh, this is cool. And then totally 100% agreement on the rewards. It always feels like it's going to be something bigger, and then you look back, you're like,
it's like a capstone dungeon. It's level cap content.
Yeah,
and you get Nothing. It is entirely intrinsic. You do it for the joy of it, or you don't do it at all. Do they owe us? Well, I think that would come back to, it's 22 minutes later. Let's answer the question. I think that they gave us experience as a reward for forcing us to watch the cutscenes, because that was a solution to the fact that we as a community were jerks to new players. So you have one of your kids has been punching another kid, and you realize the solution is to give the punching kid a new toy. And now that toy takes ammo or something, and you're regularly giving them ammo as an additional part of their weekly allowance or every time they do their chores, as to help sustain the toy that they got so they'd stop doing something they should have never been doing in the first place. And now we found a solution that says, hey, you know what? I just realized I could just tell them not to punch them. And so now we found a way that the punching stops, and we're going to stop giving ammo. Yeah. Well, yeah, but you owe me ammo. I only gave you ammo so you'd stop punching. Like we only got the experience so that somebody would run dungeons with these people in a format that we couldn't screw over new players. And now there's a technology to just bypass the jerks. You can just go run it by yourself. The fact that you can run it by yourself, they could arguably make the cutscenes skippable, in which case these dungeons get really fast.
Right.
And if you want to run them unskipped, that is what the duty support system is for, is to guarantee you a completely uninterrupted, no random card, you are in the driver's seat experience.
Yeah.
They haven't said anything on whether or not they're making the cutscene skippable. The fact that it's on roulette implies that they're not, but what if they are?
That'd be really interesting. I think especially like if it's not skippable, then that's where the bonus came in. Because like there was the time where you had the MSQ Roulette, the rewards were okay. And
Sure.
and that's where you ended up having this mindset of like, skip the cutscene, watch it in the end. Skip the cutscene, watch it in the end. And so a lot of people were like, I don't even know what's going on, and then ultimately, I mean, it was pretty bad, especially when ARR launched, because that was actually also your best source of Poetics for trying to gear up to like I-90 back in the day. And so it was just like really interesting to see how that in and of itself has evolved into what it existed today. And so, yeah, I don't think it's owed. I think this is essentially where the community has been trained as that is a part of, maybe that's their kind of rotation. And this is just the part of the acceptance curve of like going like, oh no, something's changing. And then eventually going like, oh, all right, well, like I see what, and ultimately in 6 months, it's going to be like, hey, remember when we used to do that? Wow. It's just so much better. Like, it's just so much better now that people can go and enjoy that. They can have that experience. And that's why we put our, like, do this before 6.1 video. If you're somebody who wants to have that experience, you need to have it now. Mid-April, that changes. And so we don't know completely every degree in which that's going to change, but it's going to be a change. It's going to be important in that regard. So at that core, like, guys, let us know. Do you feel like you get owed? Do you want to see that content shift? Do you agree with Chris? Should they go in the 50, 60, 70, 80 roulette? Should that kind of balance that out? Just a tad bit, maybe? Just a little
not 500 Poetics, not 3/4 of a level experience. Don't get crazy.
Maybe like 100 Poetics, do you think? Or like, what do you feel is a fair amount?
Yeah. 100 Poetics for your first time of the day would be fine.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Guys, let us know what bonuses and things like that, how you'd like to see that kind of shift itself. I think you also brought up a good point with the PvP with 6.1. That's a whole new mode. Like, that's going to, I think, we've seen PvP obviously level through the roulette itself, and who knows, we'll see how that plays out. But so let us know. Chris, why don't you sign us off?
Well, guys, I'm sure I'll see you all again soon. Brian is managing streams on Friday still. I will be back to it April 4th, and then I still need to finish clearing 2.0 before 6.1, which I don't have a date. So when streams resume April 4th, there will be some degree of sprinting towards 2.0 from Hawk Manor. So be sure to come hang out. Thanks for everybody that came by this weekend. That was really beautiful, and it was wonderful to sit and listen and be a part of that.
Thanks, everyone. Hopefully you have a great day. Hopefully we'll see you also in our next video. Until then.
Take care.